Hey guys, Whitney here. Thanks for joining me live today. I think we've got people filing into the room. We're going to give everybody just a couple minutes to get in here. Uh, if this is your first time joining us, welcome. But this is the Passive Investing Made Simple show. I'm Whitney Elkins Hutton. I'm the Director of Investor Education here at PassiveInvesting.com. This is a live show, so we are going to take a deep dive into various topics related to passive investing, real estate, so you can take this knowledge and put it into action and confidently go into your first or next investment. In case if this is your first time joining us, make sure that you register for future shows at passiveinvestingwithwhitney.com. You can also sign up and get access to our deal flow there. I am going to put out a little teaser for those of you guys who are joining us live today. We have got some very interesting investments that are going to be coming online here in the next 2 or 3 weeks. We're adding in yet another investment vertical. I am going to leave you guys in suspense. If you are wanting to get into passive cash flowing real estate that also has a long-term wealth build potential, hit me up at passiveinvestingwithwhitney.com and let's hop on the phone and chat about it. All right, guys. So I'm going to try this again. So we are converting. You guys have heard me stumble a couple times on this. I'm going to fill you in since you guys are here live. We are converting this into a podcast. So Melissa's like, take a big breath and do a proper intro. So I keep messing it up. Sorry, everybody. Okay, try it again. Take 2. All right. To kick off today's episode, I wanted to bring in a couple of very special guests from our acquisition team at passiveinvesting.com. You guys who have joined us before on a market report, you guys know them and love them already. Eric Fitzgerald and Christopher Neary. Eric and Chris, go ahead and take a moment and introduce yourself and your role here at passiveinvesting.com.
Yeah, Whitney, thanks for having us on. This is Eric Fitzgerald. I head up our acquisitions department here at passiveinvesting.com. So my day-to-day is broker communication, closing activities, due diligence activities, as well as underwriting and deal analysis. So I'm from Pennsylvania, currently live in Charlotte, North Carolina. So I'm one of the smart Northerners that moved down south, along with a couple other people in this call. And so, yeah, happy to be on the call, and I'll turn it over to Chris.
Awesome. Thanks, both of you guys. I am Chris Neary, the Senior Acquisitions Associate here at PassiveInvesting.com. So just like Eric, I'm helping deal source new multifamily properties that will transform into underwriting those deals and then eventually closing on those deals. And then once we acquire them, then it's kind of passed on to the asset manager, and that's where my role will end. I am originally from Long Island, New York. I also moved down south, so I'm currently residing here in Charleston, South Carolina, enjoying this beautiful 80-degree weather today.
Oh, hashtag jealous. We are a little chilly ourselves here in Boulder, Colorado today, and the wind is ripping. So we hope to stay connected during this episode. All right, guys, we are here to talk about markets. Now, before we dive into the ins and outs of Savannah, and I know majority of the people here on this call are interested in that market and maybe adding that market to their portfolio, but for people who are just joining us live, either on their passive investing journey or just passiveinvesting.com in general, I want to kind of dive into the importance of selecting the right market to invest in. So why is market research important, and what economic and demographic factors do we take into consideration when looking at where we're going to invest in multifamily?
Yeah, at a high level, obviously the old adage of location rings true in multifamily real estate. So one of the most important parts of picking an investment for us is what market and what submarket is that property in. So for us as a group, we look in the southeastern United States, in the Carolinas, Georgia, Florida, Texas, Tennessee, and a few other kind of states in the southeast. The reason why at a high level that we look in those states is because of the net migration coming in, the job growth coming in, the income growth coming into those states. And then as well as the limited supply that we see in a lot of those markets relative to the demand. So you see that translated into low vacancy rates, high rent growth. So that's just a couple of things that I can highlight there.
Awesome. What about like the actual, business part of the investment, right? Like, I know when I'm looking to invest, like personally, I'm actually like looking at the underlying taxes, the legal part, the laws in that particular areas. How does that play into multifamily investing?
Yeah, absolutely. So Eric kind of highlighted that a little bit in the sense that we look at very company-friendly states such as South Carolina, Georgia, where the tax burden isn't so high, and some of these states actually have no state income tax, such as Florida and Texas, as Eric mentioned. So that's definitely something we did very much look into. Is we're running a business here, and how well are the state laws in play for us to be running that business there. So that is something we look into. That's obviously something predetermined way before we look into each specific property at hand. So Georgia has actually been on our list or our target list for many years. And we're fortunate enough to actually have landed one recently for our first one in Savannah specifically. So yeah, that's actually like where we start. So if we were starting a business, we would want to determine what markets we want to be in, right? You don't want to be looking at all 50 states and every single market in each of those states, right? So you have to highlight a criteria of what you want to target after, and that's a big factor into it. Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, so we've kind of teased Savannah. Let's help the listeners here kind of put these metrics into play, apply them. So can you walk us through how Savannah helps kind of check all these boxes?
Yeah, let me share my screen here. I can pull up some things that we put together. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
All right. So Savannah as a whole, like we'll start kind of at a high level before we dig into any of the specific metrics. A big driver here is going to be the port. And so there's actually a story that we can share here later on in the call, where they're actually deepening the port, and they actually just completed that project. So that shows to us a commitment to economic growth in that market. The port is a huge driver of this kind of coastal market. So we saw that kind of story come out at the same time that we were pursuing this deal, and that was a great kind of indication for us that the economy is growing here. There's investment dollars going into building the economy and building more jobs. So that was a real big kind of indicator for us as we were entering this market and looking at deals. As far as income goes, this is kind of more specific to a deal that we're actually purchasing now. But within the 3-mile radius, incomes are very strong. This is near the downtown area, $67,000. There's a big kind of delta in average rent to match where the incomes can go. So meaning there's the rents here are very affordable compared to the incomes. So there's about $1,000 of average rent movement until we start getting up to 30% of the tenant's income that's going towards rent. So that's a good indicator for us to where we have some room to grow in rents where incomes are high enough to hit that. Again, at a high level, 5th largest city in Georgia. So definitely more of an established place. A lot of people think of Savannah as kind of a tourist area. But we found that there is a really good kind of economic growth story here, economic recovery story here, with 116,000 new residents over the next 10 years. At the actual property that we're buying, $127,000 average household income. So income, population, jobs, everything is growing, and that's kind of how we were able to kind of identify Savannah in our kind of more broad market targets.
And that's awesome.
Yeah. I can build upon that. So I think just to highlight, this is a huge 2 numbers in the middle of those 2 pages is that nearly 600,000 in population to date and expecting 116 for the next 10 years. That's nearly like a 15 to 17% increase in population. So right there alone is a story that there's people migrating or expected to migrate to Savannah. And those people, the reason is because of jobs. And as Eric highlighted, a port is a big contributor to that. Tourism, as we all know, it's very comparable to Charleston, South Carolina, where there's a lot of history and a lot of filmmaking where people want to go tour and see the old historic district. But on top of that, we actually have manufacturing. Believe it or not, the number one supplier of jobs is a manufacturing company called Gulfstream, which is manufacturer of jets. So they supply about 11,000 of jobs within Savannah, and they're continuing to build upon their growth of adding jobs to the market itself. And another one is going to be your medical and educators. Those are very high suppliers when it comes to numbers. So you have two main hospitals that are not far from the downtown area, as well as SCAD, which is in, I believe, for Savannah Arts and Design or something like that. Excuse me for my messing up the acronym there, but it is a school, arts and design school of about 11,000 undergraduate students. So there's a lot of educators and students as well. So the population is very diverse in age. So you have a lot of retirees and a lot of young people as well, which is a great thing to have in a market. You don't want to have just a retirement community or just a student population. So yeah, and that's the reason why a lot of people actually compare it to Charleston, because you have a lot of the same economic drivers, right? You have hospitals, you have the manufacturing like Boeing in Charleston, and here it's Gulfstream. So there's a lot of comparable economic drivers in that sense.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, so that's the city as a whole, right? You know, what areas are we looking at specifically to invest in?
Yeah. So particularly, we like the kind of downtown area because there's a lot of jobs there. That's where the majority of the population growth is happening. The year-over-year rent growth in Savannah as a whole was over 20% last year. So there's a lot of good pockets. Another good pocket, I believe, is called Pooler, which is one of the kind of suburban areas of Savannah that also has a lot of growth. But we try to focus our efforts close to the employment centers, close to where the population is growing. And so far from our research, that seems to be the downtown area, Pooler, and kind of those kind of specific areas in there.
Awesome. So I know one thing that we've talked a lot about on, you know, other calls and, you know, analyzing other markets is, you know, taking a look at like crime trends, property trends and stuff like that. So yeah, how are we like looking at that when we look at Savannah? Like are those like mostly outside the city center?
When you're asking about crime, sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we do look at crime. I would say, you know, crime can happen anywhere. That's the you know, PR response. But I would say, you know, Savannah as a whole, especially the areas that we focus in, you know, we like to see low crime stats, especially low violent crime, which you know, the downtown area and the in Pooler happens to be a little bit lower than the rest of the country. In Savannah as a whole, it's definitely not a war zone by any means. It's a very nice place to go have a vacation, you know, go have dinner in the downtown area. So not something that we're particularly worried about in Savannah.
Oh, that's very cool. Yeah, I went to grad school in New Orleans, so you know, at that point in time, you know, this is many moons ago, like a very different scenario. So thanks for kind of drawing those parallels and comparing, contrasting. So what are some of the risks of the area? I mean, one thing that comes to mind, and I know for me as an investor, you know, in you know, our most recent deal, you know, or taking a look at that deal, you know, I want to understand like what are some of the risks of the area? One thing that comes to mind is a port city. What are we doing about the coastal weather?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. You know, being in a coastal market, we have to really kind of drill down into where our insurance is going to come in at and making sure that we're getting the right kind of insurance for the area. You know, this property has never flooded. It's not in a flood zone. So those are two important factors, especially when you're looking at coastal markets, whether or not the property is in a flood zone, whether or not it has flooded in the past. So we you know, checked off both of those boxes on this deal. So that was a good indicator for us. Then obviously insurance is just going to be more expensive. That's just the way it goes. But we feel comfortable with that being, readily prepared in case something were to happen, where we have the right coverage in place for the right price. So those are some of the stops that we put in place there.
Awesome. And we've talked a little bit about the industries and the household income and stuff like that. But, just for people who are joining us or maybe not familiar with how we underwrite the tenant, the due diligence we do on the tenant, can you touch on that?
Yeah, so we do a full due diligence report on all the incomes, all the employment sectors of the tenants. I don't actually have that report up right now, but like Chris was saying, a lot of medical, some graduate students. Average household income is $127,000 on the property. So compared to where our rents are at, to where the incomes are, we have a ton of runway as far as from an affordability aspect on this deal, and a good amount of kind of discrepancy between where the people are being employed. There's not one huge employer on the property, which we like to see some diversity on the property. So some good signs when you look at that.
Awesome. So what other metrics can you share for us? I know you said you had a story about the port.
Yep, I can pull that up here. So this, like I said, kind of came out around the same time that we were pursuing the property. And so this is a project that was started in 2015 to where this is Governor Brian Kemp here, the governor of Georgia, speaking at the kind of ceremony. So they deepened the Savannah Harbor to 47 feet at the mean low water. So basically, I'll skip all the boring stuff. What that means is they're going to be able to load up to approximately 1,000 containers worth of additional cargo for increased efficiency in vessel transport. So, that helps the economy tremendously, especially in Savannah, where the port is such a big deal. And not only does it, do that, it also shows that they're willing and able to put investment dollars into the economy, into a long-term view of the economy, because that's not cheap to deepen a harbor, obviously. And I believe Chris Charleston went through a similar project.
That's correct. Yep. And it was very successful. And I think that was why Savannah actually piggybacked, or just another reason why they piggybacked off that addition.
Yeah. And this is a nice kind of stat line here. Georgia's deep water ports support more than almost $500,000 jobs, contribute $29 billion in income, $122 billion in revenue. So huge driver here in the state and in Savannah. So that was really encouraging, for us to see the investment going in to this project right in Savannah.
Awesome. That's amazing.
Go ahead. Sorry, I was just going to add, there's some actually really cool other developments, mixed use developments that are going in or already completed within, Savannah proper. So right there, actually, if you go back a page, Eric, you can see that Eastern Wharf, which is highlighted in that yellow, that mustard, almost on the left side. So that was like a $440 million mixed use. So hotel, some office, some actually single family homes that have all been developed right there, which is just in anticipation for that growth. So there's new homes, so new places for people to go to a hotel. And just to give you an idea of how expensive it is, a hotel room, because of the demand for it, an average room there is like $200 to $300 a night. And it's really difficult to actually get a hotel room. So that just kind of highlights the tourism aspect. And actually, when Eric and I went down there, it was horrible weather. So people are going regardless. It wasn't really the best time of the year. And it was just still very expensive for those tourist reasons. So there's a lot of, like, as people call them, red flags, green flags to go into Savannah. And some other stuff on the right there is highlighted that are really cool. So like the convention center is going over a massive transformation. It's going to support like an extra 1,000 jobs over the coming year. So there's a lot of these mixed use or expansion projects happening currently, and also proposed and recently finished. So we're very excited to be finally in this market and also continue our growth within this market. So it's actually $600 million. It's right there. Thank you, Eric. I said 440. Don't know where I got that.
You're undercutting us.
That's right. That's right. Also something pretty unique, you see on the right side, you see Amazon and Wayfair is actually there. So Amazon's adding a distribution center, whereas Wayfair is already currently there. So just some really high profile names that are entering or already in the market itself.
And they all play into the economic drivers and also of the area, and then also supplying the jobs that potentially our tenants have. That's amazing. All right, guys. Just one last opportunity. Is there anything else that you would like to share with people today of like why Savannah is like a hot market to invest in?
No, I think we went over the majority of it. I will say, I've been to Savannah 3 times now, and twice was for just kind of personal, trips with family and friends. So it's certainly an awesome place to just spend some time. I would encourage anybody that hasn't been there yet to go visit, go to the river kind of frontage area, walk along the brick road that is out there. It's just a good place to hang out. I don't know if that sells anybody to invest in it, but it's really a cool place to hang out at.
That's very cool. Yeah, no, I've talked to a few investors that were like, "Oh, I love this deal." And guys, we're gonna have more. Okay, this isn't the only one. But if you're certainly interested, reach out to me. But I know a lot of investors are looking for deals in areas that they want to go visit. So they can go visit their asset, but also take a little extra vacation and time to themselves. So that's a good point. Thanks for bringing that up. All right, guys. If you're joining us live, make sure to go to the chat box, drop in all your questions, go to the Q&A box, get your questions in there. We're going to hang out and get those questions answered for you. If not, be sure, or if you need to take off, be sure to join us on next week's session. And you can register at masterclass.passiveinvesting.com/registration for all future sessions, or simply go to passiveinvestingwithwhitney.com. You can see our open deals there. You'll be able to schedule time with me. I would love to talk this over with you about passive investing in general, but also if you're interested in this particular area, let's talk shop. Until next time, thanks so much for joining, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it.